Hey, thanks for stopping by the show. Sat down with a new friend of mine, Fred Adams, and we had a really good talk about his relationship with Athens music over the years, including a really tight friend of his by the name of Daniel Hutchens. Now, if you don't know who Danny Hutchens is arguably the greatest singer-songwriter of our generation, and I don't give that compliment lightly. Danny has a very large collection of work that spans several decades. Towards the end of the episode, we brought in Woody Garrison. Woody is a friend of Fred's who will be performing along with other musicians at the Daniel Hutchens Honorary Shebang, DeLang, Jubilee, and Magic Show Redux. That's a mouthful. That's going to be later this month at Livewire in Athens. The event is happening on June 20th from 6 to 11 p.m. at Livewire in Athens. Those tickets go on sale Monday, June 10th at 10 a.m. All proceeds from this event will be donated to Nuci Space, an Athens-based nonprofit. So we talk a little bit about what the intention is for that show. So glad you stopped by. I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed making it. Let's go. So where are you from originally, Fred Adams?
I'm originally from Atlanta. I was born at Georgia Baptist Hospital. Much of my early childhood, I lived kind of on the east side of Atlanta.
Oh, you might have to pull that thing a little closer to you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You want me to answer again?
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. I'll boost it.
Okay.
So from Atlanta, you're 60s baby?
67.
All right. When did you move to Athens?
I moved to Athens for my freshman year of college in 1985.
Sweet.
I had never been to Athens until that spring. I had decided I was going to come here for school without even having visited the city, in large part because when my parents were divorced, my father was a Georgia Tech graduate. I knew the divorce agreement said that he had to pay for me to go to any in-state college I wanted to. He told me he'd pay for me to go anywhere in the country other than the University of Georgia. So I was coming to UGA. I didn't know how cool it was going to be. And in the spring, I had been accepted, and I came to visit a friend that was a year older than me. And when I drove past the Athens-Clarke County sign for the very first time, and I'd moved around a lot as a child. My stepfather was in the military. I passed that sign, and I had this extreme shudder go through my whole body. And I realized that I was at home. And every time I would pass that sign for the next 15 years, I would get that exact same feeling reverberate through my body, no matter what time of day or what had been going on or what. I knew I was at home. I had never felt at home anywhere my entire life until that moment. And I was months away from even moving here yet at that time.
I remember coming to town, and I was young, but, and we'll talk about this later, but my dad was a real bad alcoholic. Name was Terry Geronimi. This was my dad. Jeff Hannon is my stepdad and raised me since I was 5 or 6 years old. But I remember I have a lot of flashes of memories, whether it be Tyrone's. I remember, did you know Kenny Starrett?
I don't think so.
Okay. He had a son named Yorma Starrett, and I remember playing out back of Tyrone's on the railroad tracks. We would bust bottles out there. Remember that? And then I remember they would do the Human Rights Festival out at the Fairgrounds, and I think they subsequently moved it downtown for a while.
to college.
So I had all these cool memories, but B-52s were exploding probably right when you got to town,
Right.
and REM, of course, was on fire about that time too. But
They were.
had you played music as a younger man?
When I was probably 11 years old, I got an acoustic guitar. I took lessons for a month or so, and I pretty quickly came to realize that I did not have the aptitude for that, and that I would be able to find people playing guitar that were tremendously better than me and have a lot better time listening to them than to play myself. I stopped at that time. I'd never touched another instrument again until just a couple years ago.
Really?
And I can't say that I play now, but I kind of will mess around on pretty much anything that we have laying around. I had some friends that started really encouraging me, and finally I picked something up one night and started strumming on it, and I set the guitar down pretty quickly and said, oh, I'm not doing that in front of anybody. And then I started doing it a little more. Actually, Danny, my buddy Danny Hutchens, he encouraged me to play an instrument, and at that time he would leave a lot of his gear at my house. We also had some of Todd Nance's gear around the house, including this old lap steel that John Neff had given him. An old resonator guitar that Todd had had for years. And I found on the lap steel and the resonator, I was able to get some cool sounds that came out. It may not have sounded like music, but if I was by myself, it entertained me.
Yeah, that's how I am.
And then sometimes Danny would come over and he would encourage me to pick something up and just kind of try to strum along with him. And which, boy, talk about being humbled or humiliated real quickly. He was so encouraging, and every once in a while, if I hit something that sounded like maybe a note of music, he'd go, Fred, man, that sounds cool.
Isn't it frustrating how people that are so good at guitar like him make it look so effortless?
Yes, it can be. A few years later, I started, one night, Danny had a show at the Center Stage in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And my son Dylan and his band Nineveh's Garden, they were playing at the Loft or Vinyl, I forget, right attached to the Center Stage. And they started before Danny. And I'd always told a lot of people for about a year or so prior to that my son Dylan, you cannot play guitar better than him. I don't care who you are, which is a pretty bold statement. And anytime I would take somebody to watch Dylan play, they would go with a lot of hesitancy in believing what I said and thought maybe I was just a little too proud of my son. But it wouldn't take long in a Dylan set before they would be jaw-dropped and eventually look at me and go, okay, Fred, I see what you meant. So that night at the Center Stage, I was able to get Danny to come with me for the first time to watch Dylan play. And Danny was the same way, just about halfway to the first song. His jaw was literally dropped, and I kind of nudged him when I saw that and was like, so, what do you think? And he went, okay. Yeah. And every time Dylan had a show after that, before Danny passed away, if Danny was available, he would go with me to watch Dylan. And Dylan plays just in an almost otherworldly manner, and he makes it look as effortless as it can be. Yeah. I wasn't trying to interject anything.
No,
that's
but
when you said something about how people could make it look so effortless, Dylan is kind of the epitome of that. And it was so cool for me to see Danny, one of my, I hate to refer to him this way because he was really just my close, dear friend, but an idol of mine, my favorite songwriter of all times, and just the coolest person that I've ever been around. And to see him standing there in awe of my son playing guitar was really something else.
So you roll into town 85. Did you have any idea what you were going to do in school? Or were you...
Oh, yeah. I was going to take political science and then get a law degree and then become president of the United States of America.
Yes.
It only took a couple years or less for me to realize, hey, Fred, if you're going to be president, your background is going to be looked into real thoroughly, and everybody's going to want to know about every little part of your life, and you don't necessarily want everything you do to be exposed to the world, so that's not the route for you.
I heard somebody was, I think my mom, no, it wasn't, who was telling me this story? I guess Danny and Eric worked at this place that used to be downtown called Gus Garcia's.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And they said that there was, I guess, a manager or whomever at the place who always liked to have an immaculate apron on. And they were saying how, I can't remember if it was Danny or Eric or both, how they always would get a kick out of throwing food at this guy to get his apron dirty because it pissed him off so much to have a dirty.
That sounds a lot more like Eric than Danny. I've never heard that story, and I don't remember it. Not trying to say anything bad about Eric.
Right.
But that sounds more like something smart-ass Eric back then would have done than Danny.
Did you work anywhere when you got to town, or were you just focusing on school?
At first, I was just focusing on school. That didn't last long. I was here, my first year of college, I was actually able to not work. The second year, I wound up with a girlfriend in the summer that moved to Athens with me in the fall. We were married in October.
No shit.
So suddenly I went from single to having a wife, and a couple months later, we found out that she was pregnant. It wasn't before we got married or anything, but so I was going to have my first child, Dylan, and then I had to start working various jobs.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was delivering the newspaper.
Yep.
Then I started writing reviews of music for the newspaper.
Oh, cool. Athens Banner Herald, or
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
For several years, I was like the main music critic of the
No
Banner
shit,
Herald.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the best things that I've ever done for my musical adventures.
I'm sure.
It didn't pay much. I'd get $25 for every story I submitted.
Loved it.
Sometimes I would do 10 a week. That's a lot to get 10 reviews done in a week. $250, that was not paying the bills. But what it did was a lot of shows I would have paid to go to.
Right.
I got in for free.
Yep.
If I did a review, I got paid the $25, and all the musicians were interested in saying hello, getting to know me or talk to me or whatever, because I may give them some positive press. And right away, they would realize I was one of them. I wasn't one of the journalists. I was one of them that just couldn't play music. So it opened up all the doors that I could have ever asked for in the world. And it started out on a small local level. And then as I started freelancing for some national magazines, and I started being able to go and review and see bands that were much bigger, going to see Eric Clapton or Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, things like that.
So you had a press pass. You were just bebopping in.
I continued to go for free to get paid. I didn't get to meet all those guys at the times. I met more of them than I could have ever hoped for, though.
I had a similar path. I had my first kiddo when I was 21 in '95 out of high school. So I had a sharp right turn in what I thought was going to be my path. It worked out. I wouldn't change anything about my life, but having a child when you're young is makes you grow up pretty quick. Yeah,
my friends used to laugh at me. I had two children within 15 months apart. And my friends that were younger and wilder, or our age and wilder, they would laugh. They had no responsibilities. They weren't married. And I started thinking, and I was like, okay, well, just wait till you're about 40 years old and my kids are out of high school and I'm home alone. We'll see who's laughing then. and now when I see those people and they have young children, I'll laugh at them with much pleasure and pride.
So what was happening? I would love to go down this memory lane with you. What were the happening spots and the happening bands around that time that you recall?
Most of my first year, I didn't really get out all that much for various reasons.
Yeah.
But by 1986, it was a widespread panic.
Pylon,
Bloodkin.
Yep.
Later in the year, Guadalcanal Diary.
Yep. Flat Duo Jets.
Yeah, the Flat Duo Jets I really loved. The Gravity Creeps.
Who just... God damn it! What's his name? Dexter just passed away recently, didn't he? Last year?
I had not heard that.
I think he passed away late last year, early this year.
Right. In the last couple of years, I haven't been quite as involved in the Athens kind of indie music scene, I guess, as I had been previously, and had been going through a third divorce, and so I'm not quite as up to date on all that kind of happening.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Rockfish Palace, 40 Watt, Uptown.
Yeah, all those. I have a lot of great memories from the Rockfish Palace, especially. Really, all three of the places you just named, even though they weren't always at the same exact location.
Right.
The names would move from place to place. I don't know what it is about the Rockfish. It wasn't like I saw my best show there, and it certainly never sounded the best. But I have some very interesting memories from there.
It was a funky place, too, if I remember.
It was.
I recall as a kid there being like you walked in. It was almost like a indoor... If my memory serves me right, I remember it being like a kind of like a walk-in, almost like an indoor flea market, kind of in a weird way.
Yeah, or a warehouse.
Yes, I remember there being a small bar in the front that had a tabletop like Pac-Man or Galaga or something. And when we would go, my folks would park me there,
right,
while they would go in the show, and they just give me a roll of quarters. I'm good.
Right.
See you on the bit.
Oh, I bet as a kid that'd be a great place to be sat.
Yeah.
And then if you went around the corner a bit, there was a door where you could go outside and get fresh air and still be kind of in the venue.
Cool.
Yeah.
My dad later, after the 40 Watt moved, he ended up renting out that original 40 Watt building with the blue front.
The one on Broad Street?
No.
There was one before that.
What's down the hill from the theater? Like you're headed. Is it? It's not Washington.
Clayton.
Is it Clayton? Okay.
Yeah, the 40 Watt was for a while where the Caledonia was.
Yes.
It's now the church.
Thank
bar.
you.
Before that, it was on Broad Street.
Okay.
When I first went to the 40 Watt, it was on at the other end of Broad Street by the farmer's hardware place.
That was another vivid memory of mine. Was when you'd walk in the 40 Watt, the stage was right there against the front.
Right.
And then there was like the smallest ever soundboard booth in the back corner.
And they barely had room for that.
Yeah, it was like, damn, that was an afterthought.
Right. If 100 people got in that room, it was overcrowded tremendously. Right. I had some great times in there, though. I hated when the Caledonia closed. It was a great place that really did a lot for local bands. It gave them a stage to play on with good sound, despite the limited sound gear capacity. My good friend Sloan Simpson, he also had an arrangement with Caledonia where he had microphones just mounted in the ceilings at all times, and he could just leave his gear there, go in at the beginning of the night, turn on his recording, go back at the end of the night if he needed to, and turn it off. Damn. So that enabled him to get an extensive amount of local Athens bands and bands coming through Athens, documented and recorded, that otherwise no one would ever have known anything about.
So when did you first run into Bloodkin and kind of hit it off with those guys?
It was really Danny originally before I had ever seen Bloodkin. Starting in 1986 when he and Eric moved to town that summer.
They came to Fort School as well?
No, they did not come from school. They had left Huntington, West Virginia. Just they were going to travel the country and go to cool happening cities and see where they felt that they had found home.
Okay, cool.
And I believe it was Eric's mother that at the time worked at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So they stopped there as they left Huntington, stayed there for a little bit. And then when they left Myrtle Beach, the very first stop was Athens.
Really?
Athens was planned to be the first of many stops along the way till they found home.
Wow.
Well, they never left.
Yeah.
Because much like when I got to Athens and I felt like I was at home, as soon as I drove past that sign, it didn't take them too long of being here till they realized they had found home as well.
Damn.
And back then in '86, anytime I would go to the Uptown Lounge, starting in the fall, it would seem like there was always this real pretty guy standing back by the bar with a notebook, just writing almost as fast as he could. And it was Danny. And occasionally as I was getting a beer and I'd be standing next to him, I'd be like, hey, man, what's going on? And just kind of got to know him very minimally like that. And about a month or so later, my first wife, Hope, one of her good friends from high school, had been Jennifer Middleton, who was dating Danny at the time. So Hope said one day, hey, let's go over to my friend Jennifer's apartment. She's going to be with her boyfriend, Danny. And we went to hang out. I didn't even realize, I don't think at the time, that it was going to be him. And I don't even recall if I probably knew his name was Danny or Daniel, but didn't really know him other than he was the guy that was always at the bar writing these lyrics as fast as he could. So I got there to the apartment. I was like, oh, hey, it's you. What's going on, man? Good to see you. And I was real excited to sit and get to know him a little bit better. After talking music for a few minutes, he went to the stereo, asked me if I knew anything about Van Morrison, which I didn't know at the time. I maybe knew a brown-eyed girl, I would hope. And he put on the record Astral Weeks, which over the course of the next 30 or 40 minutes, I feel like it changed my life. It just introduced me to a whole new array of sounds and ways of looking at things in music that I had never heard. And I never heard Danny, I don't think, do any Van Morrison or anything, but I always felt this connection to him from that moment on, for him having introduced me to that moment of music, which was much the same as I always felt towards the guys in Widespread Panic, who I got to know very quickly, because they really exposed me to the world of music that I had not previously been aware of through all the covers that they had played over the years or started playing over the years.
Was Vic Chestnut kicking around back then too?
He was, and I was familiar with Vic, would go see him some of the time. To be perfectly honest, I was never the biggest fan of Vic. I guess there was something about the way that he sang or that just didn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of arguments or debates over the years with various musicians, Danny being the one that I discuss this with the most, about Vic's songwriting compared to theirs or other people's. Most of the songwriters in town or musicians, they looked at Vic as the highest best. And I always thought that was utterly ridiculous for Danny Hutchens to look at anybody that way.
Yeah, he had a I don't know Danny's whole story, and I purposely didn't look into it a lot because I knew I was coming to see you. But the man could there's certain people that can paint a picture in your mind with words. And I mean, I'm drawing a little bit of a blank right now, but he was certainly one of those people, like when you listen to End of the Show, you can feel the different characters in that song based on the way he wrote it and sang it.
Most definitely. And the comparison that I heard Danny give the most, and that would most commonly come to my mind, probably even before I heard Danny say it, was he was the Mark Twain of Southern music.
That's a good way to put it.
Mark Twain could paint a picture in your mind with his words.
That's
so
right.
could Danny Hutchens. And Danny was all about telling his stories via song through characters. And a lot of the characters would reoccur over and over. You mentioned End of the Show. You know, in End of the Show, he mentions Maria. Maria's killing me. And the name doesn't jump out so much in other songs, but there's at least 4 or 5 other songs where Maria is mentioned. And Maria was not a person named Maria. Maria was Danny's true love of his life at the time and girlfriend, and in many ways remained that way till the end of his life. And she was a girl named Kim.
Really?
Yeah. Who I don't think that I ever met Kim. I've talked to her a few times after Danny died and communicated with her via email. But to hear Danny just sit and talk about her, I could see the stories he had told via song, as well as other stories developing in my mind that weren't even songs that he had ever written yet. They had quite the special spark that was what prompted so much more of his music and his writing and inspired him than just the songs where Maria was named. She was a very special person.
That's super interesting. Instant friends, I'm sure, Thick as Thieves. I remember, I'm so mad at myself because if you remember, Athens back in the day had those big, I don't even know what they're called, the big circular things downtown where everybody would staple their show posters to.
Yeah.
And that was how you knew what was going on, either the flagpole or those fucking things that had the band signs on.
Right. There were a couple other magazines around at the time.
Okay. Yeah. When I started working at Uptown and Georgia Theater, I got my wits about me and started collecting those. And I had several Bloodkin ones that I don't know what happened to, along with other bands, and I'm so upset about it. But being in Nuci space, and even at the Atlanta airport, there are other people out there that did a good job of collecting all those old show posters.
I did the same as well.
Did you?
And not just the posters, but some of the actual magazines, whether it was flagpoles or there were a couple others. One was the Marquee that was put out by the Banner Herald. Another one was called On Top of the Rock that existed for a few years. Huh. I would have some entire copies of some of those. Some I would just have stories that either I had written or about some bands that I really liked. And then, especially when it came to Panic and probably some with Bloodkin, if there was just like an ad for, say, the Uptown and Panic was playing on Monday night, I would clip out just that ad and keep. And I have dozens, if not 100 or more of those.
That's
around.
Killer. That's
and
killer.
They're pretty well organized in notebooks, in chronological order, in sheet protectors.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good shit.
Every once in a while, when I pull some of that stuff out, it's amazing the memories that it will have come rushing back to my brain that I probably would otherwise never have thought of again.
Yeah,
you just need that trigger point sometime, you know?
Yeah, very true. It's funny how something will take you back. Before streaming was a thing, and we, you traded tapes or you bought some live shows at Wuxtree or whatever it was. But there's still certain shows that I can listen to that will take me to a certain period of time.
Yeah. Well, like what? Give me an example or two.
There was a couple runs that Panic did at Phillips Arena or the Fox, and I remember very vividly having no business in Atlanta because we didn't live there. Mm-hmm. So it was a big deal for us to leave Athens to go to Atlanta to this huge Coliseum to see a show, and it was inevitably always a shit show because we'd always drink too much and party a little too much, and then not realizing, we got to get back to Athens, right? Because we're broke. We're not getting a hotel in Atlanta. Right. We're coming back down 78 because there was no 316 back in the day.
Yep. You are old.
That's right. So you're plugging along. I mean, the 80s, you got a kiddo, you got a couple.
Dylan was born in October of 88, and then Lincoln January 3rd of 1990. So I made it through the 80s with just one.
Okay.
Not long into the 90s, though.
So you did some music reviewing. Did you have any other jobs kicking around in Athens back in the day?
A few different things. Some were whatever various odd job I could get, whether it was delivering the newspaper also, working at Custom Sound, the audio store.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
My dad in the late 80s had started a health insurance agency and became hugely successful really quickly. He tried to get me into the business when DeLang was first born. I gave it a go for a little bit of time in 1988. I was not of the mentality of what it took to try to sell somebody something at the time, because usually if I thought of selling, you thought of trying to convince somebody to buy what you had. No. It didn't work for me. I didn't do that for long. Later in the 90s, I did go back into the health insurance business with him and helped him grow a company that was doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year worth of business. Because I came to realize between, say, 89 and 95, that just because you were selling somebody something, it didn't mean you were trying to cram what you had down their throat.
Right.
You needed a variety of things available.
Yeah.
And if you knew the market and knew everything about your business better or as good as anybody else, and you could help your client identify, here's what you need. Okay, here's what's going to fit your situation the best. If you had it, you could sell it to them. If not, you could tell them what to go get from somebody else and have somebody to refer them to.
Yep.
Then you weren't really selling, even though I was, and I became better at selling than just about anybody could be.
Yeah.
But I was really just helping somebody find a solution to their problems, and I had such a level of expertise, which once I get into something, unless it's playing an instrument, which I can't do, I can real quickly develop a high proficiency for whatever it is that I'm doing. So it was real easy for me to just sit and talk to somebody and figure out, oh, okay, what is it you want and need? And people open up to me pretty easily and will tell me their story. And then I'd say, okay, so it sounds like you need this and this. Well, here's what's going to fit the best. And people would just line up to sign up with things for me. I got so good for a while that I was able to charge people $300 just to talk to me, to tell them what they needed to buy. The state insurance department didn't like that. And so I wasn't able to continue doing that for very long, but I had a waiting list of people to talk to me.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And later, after I worked with my dad in California for his huge company for a few years, I came back to Georgia, wasn't in the insurance business for a while, went back to focusing my time on music journalism. That wasn't paying the bills, as I suddenly had 3 kids, had gotten divorced, and I was a single father caring for 3 children at the time. So I had somebody contact me, and it wound up getting me back into the insurance business once again. This time it was online, talking to people on the telephone
that's cool.
and online. And once again, I was very quickly able to identify, here's the questions I need to know. Here's what will tell me what's best for them. I know the products better than anybody or as good as anybody. And once again, I had a waiting list of people waiting to sign up to talk to me.
Yeah.
And that spun out for a while into me doing training for other agents and traveling the country and speaking at some conferences and just speaking for hundreds of agents that wanted to hear what I had to say about how to do their job as good as it could be done, and then wanting to sign up or have a line after I spoke to buy my products, my tapes, and my books that I had written and recorded, or to sign up to pay me to buy an audio recording of that day's seminar.
That's cool.
That was a very cool, fulfilling period of life. It was amazing to me how me in the late 80s brought into the insurance business, which just wasn't my thing, and trying to be forced to sell somebody something, which totally wasn't my young hippie utopia image of anything, to later in the mid 90s and then the early 2000s, just kind of sitting there going, oh, hey, I'm Fred, and I can tell you, I can ask you a few questions, and I can tell you what's best for you, and and having people sign up and pay to get my advice. It was really something else. It all came from, I was trying to help people do what was best for them. It had nothing to do with me, and I knew if I helped more people get what they wanted, what that I needed for myself would come back to me many, many times over.
I almost forgot to bring this up. I was talking to Sean Mills from Machine Funk, and he said that some of the guys from Panic and Danny came to, I think it was Smith's Old Bar, to see him play, and he was talking about how nervous he was. And he said during set break, he's like, man, tell me about this guy, Henry Parsons. Was he some asshole from the town you grew up in? And Danny said, no, man, I made that shit up. So,
have you heard an audio that I posted once online about Danny telling the story of Henry Parsons?
No.
Yeah.
I'll find it.
When Danny and I used to, when we started going through all of his songs and trying to prepare his lyric book, and some days we'd just sit around and talk about various songs or for some period of time.
What was the impetus for that effort? Was he sick, or was it just it was just a project that he knew that he wanted to do?
When Danny was 5 years old for Christmas, his sisters gave him a copy of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Mm-hmm. He sat there that Christmas day and read all the lyrics as he listened to the album and realized his purpose in life was to be a songwriter. And over the course of the next couple of years, again, this was a 5-year-old, he came to realize that his life's work was to write songs, and before he died, to document a songbook with all of the lyrics he'd ever written.
Cool.
So, Danny wrote, we have a lyric book that will be coming out later this year that will have 432 songs. Danny had written well over 1,000 songs. Most of them nobody, probably other than me, has ever even seen.
Incredible.
When I cleared out his desk after he passed away, there was piles and piles of lyrics, which he and I had been going through. We started around August of 2019. Mm-hmm. And what happened that week was in the late 90s, Danny had a very close friend that became Bloodkin's manager, Big Zach Weil, who was an incredible force of nature, unlike anyone I had ever met. When Zach passed away after Panic's first shows at the Classic Center, it impacted Danny as much or more than anything I'd ever seen impact any individual. Zach's death, it sent Danny into a very bad downward spiral of drugs and depression and alcohol. That was incredibly difficult to deal with.
What year was this? Around?
2000, I think, were the first shows at the Classic Center. Not the first shows at the Classic Center, the ones that they recorded.
The second, yes. I saw Eric at that show and patted him on the back and said, "Sorry for your loss," and let him go about his way. But yes, I remember that.
So I had become good friends with Zach about 18 months or so before he passed away. Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest things that ever happened to me, along with Zach, I went to his apartment one day, which was the apartment that he was later found dead in. It had nothing to do with me. I was not there. I had not seen Zach that day or that weekend. But I walked into his apartment one day, and right by the front door, I saw this stack of papers. And I could see the front was a set of song lyrics. And I was like, "Zach, what is this, man?" He said, "Oh, that's a stack of all Danny's song lyrics. I've been helping him go through, copyright everything, and make sure everything's documented." And I went, "Zach, may I please take this stack of papers right now to the copy store and make myself a copy so there's not just this one?" And he said, "Yeah, Fred, go ahead." Well, apparently, I don't know if other copies were made and lost along the way or what, but this was 1999 when that happened. Mm-hmm. Zach died in 2000. Flash forward to 2019.
You're
Danny
picking up the baton.
Danny did not have a copy of all the stuff that Zach had.
Wow.
And by that point, I had it in a leather-bound notebook. I was referring to it as the Bible. and Danny had started coming over earlier that year to my house on Deering Street, and he felt like he had found this just heaven there because it was so calm and peaceful. And no disrespect intended towards her, but as long as my third wife wasn't there causing a commotion at the time, it was the most amazingly calm, pristine place where artists could just go and feel welcome to do whatever it was that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And we had started doing some songs and talking about various songs of his. And I came to realize one day, Danny doesn't have a copy of this notebook with all these songs. What? and I made a copy for him, and I gave it to him in early August of 2019. And when I handed it to him, I'll never forget the look on his face. He was standing there in his Interstellar Boys baseball cap in my office, and he opened and started flipping through. He's like, "Wow, Fred, I don't recognize this song." And he'd flip a couple more pages. "I don't recognize this song." And I was like, "Okay, Danny, let's sit down and let's talk about a few of these songs." Some of the ones that touched me the most, when I remember first getting home when Zach let me copy this and I started reading through. I stayed up for at least a day or day and a half when I got home with that stack of lyrics. I did not sleep until I'd read them all. And I remember a couple that struck me the very most when I opened the notebook, and they were in alphabetical order. One was a song called 7 Days and 7 Nights, which never got released. I got Danny to play it for me several times after that. But I'll play it for you sometime.
Okay.
It is really, truly an amazing song. The other that I remembered that stuck with me most was a song called Premonition. And when Danny and I talked about that, I remember this look on his face, because I'd seen Bloodkin play that song. It wasn't like 7 Days and 7 Nights I'd never heard performed. Mm-hmm. I at least once I knew I had seen Premonition. And Danny got to that, and he was like, "I just don't remember this one." And I was like, really? I remember you playing this at least once. And I just happened to have it on video. And I was able to pull out the video and play it for him. And he was like, wow, I'd forgotten all about this song.
That's fantastic.
So the next time that Danny did a solo show, which was sometime in August of 2019 in Covington, Georgia, he played Premonition out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it. He hadn't told me it was going to happen. and as we talked on the phone, because we were in separate cars coming back home, he's like, yeah, what did you think about that old song that I played? And it took me a moment for everything to kind of register. And then as I realized that was that song he had forgotten about, and thinking about the song called Premonition, where he was having a premonition of what was going to happen in the future. He had been a 5-year-old kid, and he knew his life's work then was to document this all of his lyrics in a book that he needed to release. Come on in. And somehow I had been at the intersection of it all. Just a second, Woody. I had been at the intersection of it all to bring this Premonition song back to the forefront of his mind, and he performed it without me realizing he was going to. And then that night after the show was like, yeah, Fred, we got to get back on putting my lyric book back together. That was 7 months before COVID, and COVID was when we really kicked into working hard. But that was the impetus of digging back into everything, and he didn't yet realize he was near the end. He did before he died. He started saying, "This isn't going to last much longer."
Oh wow!
And I can get into that in more detail in a bit, but just from it coming from Zach letting me copy all the lyrics in 1999. 20 years later, I showed it to Danny. There were things he didn't remember. And one of the 2 songs that I had read that struck me the most that night, I first read through all the lyrics, I didn't even tell him that story. That was the song he chose himself to pull back out. And last year, when we did the first tribute to Danny at Livewire, Bloodkin's original drummer, Alberto Salazar, the band that he was playing with at the time, the Redstone Ramblers, they did Premonition with Alberto singing it. And it was just such a special kind of full circle moment to me. And Alberto, he can't be here this year for the tribute show, but he was probably the most excited of any musician there last year. He didn't know Bentley Rhodes, Bloodkin's later drummer. They had never met. And Alberto he gave me so much thanks that night for everything that I was doing for Danny's music, and he was so excited about everything else that was going to come out in the future. For that to have been Bloodkin's original drummer, and without even knowing this whole story, he chose Premonition to do as his song that night. It was just all...
Is Bentley the black-haired tall guy?
He's not really tall. He's black-haired.
I think I know who you're talking about, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get your guess?
Yeah, let me just grab the door. Hey, sorry for the interruption.
No.
So, yeah, if we want to tell another story or two before he comes in.
Of course.
We kind of shift gears
You might have to grab that thing and pull it closer to you. We were talking about Henry Parsons.
Okay. So, yeah, I forget exactly where we left off, but I'll just kind of go from what I see as the top. When Danny and I, in 2019, we kind of relaunched his effort to get his lyric book together, which had been a lifelong project of his. At age 5 for Christmas, his sisters gave him a copy of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yep.
And as he would tell the story, because I wasn't there at the time, but he remembered that day sitting there listening to that album and reading all the lyrics on the album jacket and just thinking, wow, this is like the greatest, coolest thing. This is what I want to do with my life.
That's crazy.
And over the course of the next couple of years, came to realize that his life's purpose and his life's work on this planet was to listen to the muse of music and to write songs his whole entire life. And by the time that he had passed away, put together a book of lyrics of all the songs he had ever written. That ultimately became an impossible task because so many songs were partially written or not good enough, or there were lyrics active where lyrics would come to him a line or two at a time, and he would document that as one thing, or others where he had a full verse or a chorus. There were all these files of different stages of songs. And again, in August of 2019, I had given Danny a copy of about 300 songs of his that he had written that had been given to me in 1999 by his former manager, Big Zach Weil, who Big Zach, we love you. We miss you so much. Thank you for everything you did for us while you were here. But I walked into Zach's apartment one day, and I saw a stack of lyrics sitting by the door and asked him what it was. He said, I've been working with Danny to get all of his songs transcribed, documented, and copywritten. And right that second, without even saying another word, I said, Zach, can I please take this right now and go to Kinko's down the road and copy it all? So I have a copy, and so if anything happens to yours. He said, yeah, of course. And that was all I'd said after walking through the door. I picked up that stack of lyrics, went down to Kinko's, copied it, and about 30 minutes later, I was back at Zach's apartment for whatever it happened to be we were doing that night. And I couldn't wait to get away from Zach and get back home so I could sit with that stack of lyrics. It's the only time I ever remember wanting to get away from Zach. I wanted to be uninterrupted with nothing else in my mind other than I wanted to read through this big stack of about 300 pages of lyrics that Danny Hutchens had written to date as of 1999. So flash forward 20 years, 2019, right after I first got my copy in 1999, I had 3-hole punched them and put them in a leather-bound notebook. It was real nice. There were very few people I ever let touch that book or even let know that I had that book. Some of my very closest friends, every once in a while, if they were over, I'd say, hey, look at this, and I'd open it up to one specific page, and some of them would go, oh, my God, what is this notebook? And I would explain the story. Some of them would just read the page and hand it back, but usually they'd want to know more. So to me, it was one of the most special things that I had in my possession. I probably had 3 items, all related to music, and I still have them all that are most important to me. One was this stack of lyrics that Zach let me copy, which I had come to start referring to as the Bible, because of Danny Hutchens being my favorite lyricist of all times. We were good friends. You know, we grew much closer the last 5 years or so of his life, but and knowing that I was one of 2 people that had this, because not even Danny had a copy of all these lyrics, made it incredibly special. One of the other items, one, my favorite band of all time, and this is what helped me and Dave Schools grow to become so bonded when we first met, was Led Zeppelin. And when I was between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college, I was flipping through the back of Rolling Stone, and I saw an ad where somebody had made 1,000 copies of the Led Zeppelin Presence statue. And I was able to buy one for less than $100.
Damn.
I've never seen one anywhere else. People that are real into Zeppelin or musicians will see that at my house and be like, oh my God, how do you have one of those? And it's hand numbered on it. It's like number 286 out of 1,000. Well, once in the late 80s, my first wife, Hope, she knocked it off and it broke at the base. I'm surprised I lived through that. But we were able to put it back together with only one little chip out and kind of paint over it so it doesn't look like it was messed up. So that and the Bible of lyrics. And then the third item that I have is the original master recording of Coconut from February 1986. That was given to me by JB.
That's cool.
And I won't really say much more about that on the record, but I tried to donate that to the Georgia Theater when the building burnt down. I was a pretty good friend of Wilmot, who ran the place, and from my house on Deering Street, we could see the smoke coming up, but we didn't know that it was happening. We hadn't looked out the window yet when I woke up that day, and we turned on the Atlanta news, and there was coverage on the news of fire coming out of the Georgia Theater.
That's how I found out about it.
And my third and final wife, Lisa, and I were watching it, and we're like, oh my God, we got to get up right now. You know, we were just starting to take our first sips of coffee in bed, and we jumped up and dashed right down there and saw Wilmot pretty quickly. And I was like, dude, I got to do whatever I can do to help you get this place rebuilt. I so appreciate everything you've done to restore this place. It was falling apart when he bought it.
Right.
And he had just pretty much finished getting it how he wanted it, with the big fans there, and you could go in there and not sweat to death. And I felt so bad for Will, and I was like, man, I want to help you raise funds to get this place rebuilt.
Did Bloodkin did they record always in Athens, or did they go to Atlanta to do it?
Well, Danny recorded wherever he could.
Well,
wherever he was, basically. Bloodkin's original studio stuff that wound up getting released was done in Decatur, Alabama at Johnny Sandlin Studios.
Okay. The book, the Bible, that's an amazing story. So last year was the first year that you did, would I call it a benefit or like a remembrance of?
Yes. Yeah, Danny's been passed away about 3 years now. We didn't do anything the first year due to logistics, so about 2 years after he had been dead.
Doing it at Livewire again this year?
Yes, we are.
So I reached out to you, and this is for everybody listening. You're doing this again this year. I'm really excited that I'll be able to go. I didn't know it was going on last year. So you and I decided that we were going to get together. I, of course, wanted to learn more about you, but I think our main goal was to give some exposure to the people that are going to be performing at this event.
I don't think it was that originally, but as I mentioned the event to you, it has evolved, and thank you so much on behalf of me and Danny and all the other artists.
I think it's an interesting, it's not something I've done before, and I'm excited it's an exciting little project that we're going to do. So you've got a friend here today.
Yes.
That we're going to talk to or let play.
Both.
Okay. And then we're going to get together in a couple days to do this again at Nuci Space.
Right.
With a trio. Is that right?
Some of that logistically is still up in the air.
Okay.
They may actually come here today.
Okay.
Sunday, Woody has a show at the Globe at 6:00, so I need to be done with whatever by then, or meet you back at Nuci's after 9.
Okay.
But yeah, again, I want to thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, and it's really opened up an avenue, one more, to expose Danny's music that I wouldn't have thought of if it wasn't for you, and I can't thank you enough.
What's the date of the show?
June the 20th. It's 2 weeks from yesterday. It's been approaching really quickly, and kind of like it last year, and kind of like a lot of things with Danny, other than like the lifelong project of the book that we were going to put together, and which he used to often say to me, Fred, how can this ever be done before I die? Because I'm still writing songs. And I would say, Danny, we got to have a deal, man. Whoever dies first, the other one has to finish this, and it's got to be done no matter what. Which was our kind of handshake agreement.
When you and I spoke on the phone, I think I told you that I overheard a conversation about his daughter, and these two people were talking, and one of them said to the other, "She's amazingly talented." And I'm sure you know her as well.
Yeah, Amberly's a sweetheart of a girl. It was real interesting back when we were doing the song cycle streams at Danny's house. And anytime Amberly was there, she wouldn't ever come into the music room. She wasn't going to interrupt. And she was exceedingly shy back then. I think she's still pretty shy, but she's broken out of that some.
Teenager?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She turned 16. She's probably 17 now.
Well, I'm very confident, I think, in saying that as you and I work through this process and we go to edit, to keep in stuff, take out anything we need to take out. Yeah. I will say, I think I speak on behalf of the Panic community, of which I've been a part for a long time, which you have too, that his songwriting and singing brought a flavor to the music that we knew of Widespread Panic that exposed me to him, and it's a damn shame that he's not here. His music certainly lives on, and I not to put any pressure on her, but that'd be super cool if she ends up being a singer-songwriter too.
She is an amazing singer, and just kind of trying to finish what I was trying to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were perfectly timed. When we were doing Song Cycle, and if she was at the house, he would usually try to ask her if she would want to come down, or if he didn't, and I would say something. He'd just be like, no, she's just too shy, Fred. She's not going to do that. But he would often encourage her to come down and try to sing a song.
That's great.
And he knew how good she was going to be. She wasn't that great yet at the time. When I first saw her after he passed away and she sang, it was one level of, okay, I think this is what Danny envisioned for her. When I saw her the next time, probably about a year later, I was just floored. She grew into such an incredibly beautiful, graceful human being with an amazing voice. I know that I'm glad Danny can hear her from wherever he is now. So he would be prouder than I think he could have ever imagined. And I really hope that she does join us this year to sing a song or two of his. It would really be special. And as you can probably tell, it would mean a lot to me. And it's really, to me, just it would mean a lot to Danny's spirit.
Well, I love that you keep his memory alive. Certainly nobody that I know is more qualified to do so, and so thank you for letting me into your life a little bit. We've not known each other. I knew of you through a couple people, and I could tell you're a good man who. It's funny how when you lock onto a mission, I'm like that too. When I lock onto a mission, kind of like I am with this podcast, there's this driving force that pushes you forward that you can't explain, but it's there.
I can tell you when I first realized that driving force was within me, that Danny was still alive. And it was the first, I'd always heard about these bins of cassettes filled with hundreds of cassettes that he had carried around from place to place, from one girl's apartment where he would sleep on the couch to the next. And anywhere he went, his instruments, his lyrics, his master reels, and these bins of cassettes, which were probably 400 or 500 cassettes, had to go. That they were a priority. And the first time I went to his last house that he lived in before he passed away, and I saw those cassettes there, And then we started talking about the project to document all of his lyrics. And he even mentioned this when he first wrote up the manifesto, he called it, of the Song Cycle series. That he knew back in August of 2019, it was time for him to finally get together and finish his lyric book. And he and I were meeting a lot then, and I would always push him, and I would say, Danny, what about all those cassettes over there? And he's like, I always knew, Fred, one day I was going to be an old man, and it would be me and those cassettes. And I'd be going through them and trying to look for lost songs and figure out what all I hadn't finished. And now here I am, an old man, going through these cassettes with you. And I would say, Daddy, you don't have to listen to a single one of those cassettes. Let me have them. Let me go home with them.
Are you writing down the lyrics?
No.
Or what were you doing with the tapes?
I was documenting what song it was.
Got it.
If it was like an early version of a song or something that was never finished.
Got it.
And a lot of these tapes he would label as work tapes. And to Danny, what a work tape was, a lot of times he was sitting there just coming up with the melody or the lyric. So, like, say, All Dolled Up is an example that comes to mind. The earliest version of that is a good 20 minutes. And at first it's him like humming or clapping with a melody, and then he'll start adding some lyrics, and then it'll come back around, and he may have a little bit of a guitar verse. And there's some of the most fascinating things on there, more than you could probably imagine. I would be keeping notes about, this may have been this song or this garbage, and here's the stuff nobody's ever heard. Danny, do you remember this? And over the course of the first month of us doing that, we had unearthed over 100 songs that he had forgotten, had never been finished, which added 100 songs roughly to his catalog.
Wow.
And I have yet to finish going through everything, because after he passed away, I still probably have 50 more cassettes. It's one of the next things I plan to do after the tribute show on June 20th. Then there are other cassettes that I had not gotten a hold of yet that are now with the Bloodkin archives, and we have not yet come to any sort of agreement on that. Hopefully we will one day, because all I'm doing is trying to honor Danny's wishes, which make sure that all his stuff that he deemed as having been worthy gets released, so that all the time of his life that he spent after age 5, when he realized what his mission on earth was, to listen to the muse and to distribute and to get out, record, document, make sure that there were both lyrics and a copy of how the song should have been in his mind available for people to be listening to and playing hundreds of years from now. Literally, that's what he would say. It was just like listening to Mark Twain talk about with music. Hundreds of years from now, people need to be able to hear this song. They need to be able to read these words and hear how the song was supposed to go. And if they want to play the song differently, that's fine. But this music that the muse gave to me, it needs to be able to be available hundreds of years from now for all of civilization to hear. That was Danny's mission, which was a real heavy thing.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing, and it was really gracious for you to have me in your home, having just met me. So I'm looking forward to this project. And
I can't thank you enough. Again, anything that gives me the opportunity to help finish Danny's mission, I'm eternally grateful for. And when I first started working with Danny and doing this, and I would tell a few of my closest friends, I remember my friend Kyle Vereen, his brother Gary was Panic's roadie. I first told Kyle about what I was doing with Danny and how it was Danny's life's work. Kyle just burst out laughing. He's like, "Yeah, Fred, it's going to be your life's work now too, isn't it?" I had no idea that at that moment just how wise Kyle Vereen was.
That's fantastic.
And it has kind of overwhelmed my life since Danny passed away. And I don't say that in a bad way. When Danny and I would talk about this, and I said we had a deal that whoever died first, the other one had to finish. I don't know if he just wouldn't agree to it at first or had a little hesitancy or something, but I remember several times saying, Danny, there's nobody else in this world that no matter what obstacle is put in my path, or no matter what it costs me personally, I will not stop until this is done. I will not let anything get in my way from finishing this if I'm the one of us that survives, and I think I may last longer than you.
June 20th, Athens, Livewire.
And thank you again for helping us promote the show.
No, the pleasure's all mine. Well, Woody Garrison, I know your face, and you know my parents. I'll figure it out later, but it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
When did you roll into Athens?
Originally, 1978. Summer, it was my 11th grade year in high school.
That's right when my dad came, 78-ish.
So, yeah, I remember him from, like, the second Human Rights Festival. I knew him by that point, I think.
You might have to get a little closer,
Okay.
just while we chat.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, so I believe, yeah, he was at the second Human Rights Festival, and so was I. So that would have been around 79, 80.
Dad tells the story about, was it still out at Legion Field at that point?
Yeah.
He tells the story of, I won't go into great detail, but I remember he said there would be a bunch of bikers that would pull up with kegs in a van, and they'd pass a hat around. And he recalled drinking biker beer at the first few Human Rights Festivals out at Legion.
It sounds right. I remember that tone of party around Athens often, you know.
Did you, were you here for school? Is that what you came?
I came in high school. My mom got a job up here, so we moved up here when I was 16.
From where?
Moultrie, Georgia.
Oh, yeah. I know Moultrie.
And that's where I was born and where my father was born. Same doctor delivered myself, both my sisters, my father, and my aunt and my uncle.
Nice. What? Where'd you work while you were in town? It seems like everybody was either at Taco Stand, Gus Garcia's.
I was,
Steve
The
Reno's.
only food service I was willing to do after my 6-week stint at Burger King in 10th grade was delivering pizzas. You know, I didn't want to work in the line or work in the kitchen or anything, but I delivered pizzas for Domino's for 3 years. I was at the Prince Avenue store. Mikey Hauser was at the Baxter Street store.
Oh,
at the
that's
same
funny.
time. His roommate was our regional manager.
Small world. So moved to Hawaii?
Moved to Hawaii in 2010, January of 2010.
Okay.
And just moved back 2 weeks ago.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's a different town, isn't it?
But I've been coming back to visit.
Okay.
Yeah, my family lives here, and my friends live here, so I've been back once or twice a year, except for 2.5 years for cancer treatment and COVID in a row. And,
So we closed out our conversation talking about the event at Livewire, June 20th.
awesome.
What are you going to play for us today?
Well, I'm going to play Man Selling Roses. It's a Danny song from his solo album, Lesser,
Excellent.
that I was inspired to learn last year.
All right. Well, whenever you're ready.
Man selling roses, dirty little corner downtown. Business is loveliness, but where's the darkest frown? The thorns upon his roses make no crown. Daisies for $1, give you some free advice. He says you only got one shot, boy, to live up to your life. It's more than money, I ain't gonna tell you twice. Money can't help you when you're this far down. Judge can't hang you when you're this far down. He said, watch where you are stepping. These woods are full of snakes. Ain't no such things as aim. Ain't no lucky breaks. There's only one decision you can make. He swears he thinks he's seen someplace sometime before. Shuffles on down wears the darkest brown. Thorns upon his roses make no crown.
Beautiful, as expected.
I just had to learn that one after I heard it a few times. I learned the guitar part, and like, got to learn the words.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Can I chime in with a little bit of background?
Of course.
About that?
This is, yeah.
Well, last year at the first annual Daniel Hutchens Honorary Shebang, DeLang, Jubilee, and Magic Show, which was a name Bentley Rhodes and I came up with. Bentley wanted to keep adding to the words, even though it got a little wordy. We decided that we were going to perform one of Danny's albums in Hall, his original solo album, Lesser, was what we decided to do last year.
Okay.
That had never been done. Nobody seemed to know every song on the record, and it was kind of in Bentley's hands to make sure that it happened. I don't think that I've said this yet, but when Danny and I used to meet about his life's work and finishing the lyric book and any incomplete songs that may have been left around that he had told me needed to be in the lyric book, he used to tell me, Fred, if anything happens and there's songs not yet done, go find Bentley. Bentley had been Bloodkin's drummer from around 1995 or 6 till about 2005. After he left the band, he and Danny continued co-writing songs together. Very few of those were ever released. Most people don't even know that was happening. But usually it would be Danny having lyrics that he couldn't find music for, sending it to Bentley, and Bentley creating the music. Again, none of that was ever released. There were about 6 or 7 songs that were finished all the way, and another 6 or 7 songs that I've been working with Bentley to finish up since. And Bentley plans to release an album this October on what would have been Danny's 60th birthday. That will be titled Bentley Rhodes Obscene Jubilee, I believe is what we're going to call it, which is part of a lyric from one of Danny's last songs, Unimpressed. The lyric goes, "This obscene Jubilee is about to hear from me." It's one of Danny's last lyrics. And when Bentley and I started this project, we decided that Obscene Jubilee had to have something to do with the title.
It sounds perfect. Yeah.
So I started talking to Bentley about doing this album because I came to realize this was a psychedelic masterpiece, the album Lesser, that Danny had done. It's very highly unrecognized by most of the world. And it's a brilliant piece of music from beginning to end. And if you just listen to the songs, some of the songs are real beautiful and great. But the collective of them all stand as a much larger piece of work, as many of the greater albums of all times do. So we were going to do this record. Bentley was going to be doing another set of music. The other set was going to include some songs from Obscene Jubilee, many of which were never finished or nobody had ever heard. It became kind of overwhelming for Bentley trying to do it all, and he asked me if, for the lesser set, if my son Dylan could be the musical director on guitar. So as we were going through rehearsals the week or so prior, and Woody got to town, and I knew that Woody had a place in that somewhere. Woody did not know Bentley. He had never met Bentley or my son Dylan, and he did have a little background with Danny, which we'll go into in a few minutes. But I knew that he had a place somewhere. And as I would just relentlessly and unendingly listen to all those songs and try to figure out who needed to do what and when, I came to realize that Man Selling Roses was a song where Woody could contribute something on acoustic guitar. And the very next song on the record, which was called Sensible Shoes, I thought he could probably add something there too.
Cool.
So during a couple days of rehearsals, we decided Woody was going to be on those couple songs. And then it came time for the show. And the show got started a little bit late, so we were running kind of behind. And at Livewire, they had a pretty hard deadline, they had told me. So we couldn't really run over, and we were running late. And I told Bentley that. I was like, man, between songs on Lesser, you don't have time to say much. You just got to go, go, go. And Man Selling Roses was the 6th song on the record. After he had done the 4th song, which was Shebang, DeLang, which was a very special song, and obviously it meant something if it was part of the title of the whole event, he decided, and we're going to have Woody up on the 6th song, Man Selling Roses. I was standing next to Woody out in the crowd, and Bentley went right from Shebang DeLang into Man Selling Roses. He skipped over the 5th song, Orchard, which meant we really didn't play the whole record in full. Bentley, you skipped over 2 other songs before the show ended too, and I know it was done for a matter of time, but we didn't quite get Lesser done in full. And I remember looking at Woody, and once Bentley started Man Selling Roses, Woody was like, I was supposed to be on stage. Did Bentley not want me? And I was like, I think he skipped a song. But I was so overwhelmed by everything that transpired that night in the room. There was so much love just amongst the crowd, and just the feeling in that room was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Even I wasn't sure that Bentley had skipped a song. I should have been, but I was so overwhelmed by
lost in the moment.
that I was kind of lost in the moment. And with Woody not getting on stage for that song, you obviously didn't jump up for the next song either, because we didn't know what the heck had happened. And after the show, I was like, Bentley, what happened? And Bentley was like, Fred, I was just so ready to play Man Selling Roses. I just had to skip right over Orchard.
Woody's like, God damn it.
So a few days later, when Woody had his next solo show, he performed Man Selling Roses. Bentley has also been performing that song ever since. So this is a song that I don't know of, and I don't even think anyone else, when Danny was alive, had never covered. The song about a man selling roses. I had this image in my head before the show, and I asked a friend of mine, hey, will you bring like 3 or 4 dozen roses? So during the show, when this song is played, you, not me, you can walk around in the crowd and give a rose to every female in the room. Well, he walked into the room, he gave me all the T-shirts that he had printed, he gave me the roses, and then when the song started and I'm sitting there with Woody, the roses are still over by the merch booth, and my friend Dave Murdoch, who had got them for me, he wasn't walking around the crowd handing them out. And by this point, the song's already going, so I had to run and grab them, and I had to run around the room real quickly and give them to everybody. I did make sure that I gave a dozen of them to Danny's wife, Christy.
Nice.
The look on her face when I did that was one of the more special moments of the night. And then after the event ended, when she walked up to me and she said, Fred, I've never been in a room where I felt as much love
That's great.
as I did tonight.
I'd play with him at jams at parties a few times, and but then I didn't really, get to know Danny very well, and was never close friends with him through the years. Just well enough to nod when we were in the same room and say hey. And then after he died, I'm over at Fred's and hanging out. And last year, right before the event, we're watching this night he was talking about. We're watching this video of what was the video? The memorial service video, I think. And it had a bunch of different people. And throughout it, it's like all of these really close friends of Danny's were really close friends of mine. Like some of his tightest connections, like Fred, and Mark Wilmot, Bill Bailey, John Kay, and all these people, Todd, all these people are popping up. And it's like, so he was always one degree of separation away. Then once I saw all those people, it's like, okay, that's why I'm a part of this. But then there's another part of the story where when I first came back after cancer treatments and COVID and was hanging out over at Fred's, it was after Danny had died. Fred had invited me over to play in the music room, and then he had kind of like him and hawed for a few weeks, and then finally he goes, okay, I've had heavy emotions
okay, by the way?
about it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And heavy emotions about it, and he, but I've decided I'm inspired to make this happen. And I came in, and it just happened, and it was great. And he, it was what he wanted and not what he didn't want. And I started talking about, once I learned to surrender to the muse, my music has been flying. And he said those are the exact words Danny would use, surrender to the muse, and let the muse flow through you and sing through you. And that's exactly what I've learned to do, is just don't think about what you're singing, don't think about what you're playing, just surrender and let it play through you.
Danny caught on to that when he was like 5 or 6 years old, not when he was in his
60s.
But you learned over time that's
exactly
how you do it.
Well, for years I stumbled and fell, and one day it's like, wait a minute, if I surrender, I can fly.
Beautiful.
Well, and I had almost put my music completely away. I'd put my guitar in its case for 6 years and had only written a couple of songs in 8 years. And I plucked around on my ukulele daily, but and borrowed a guitar at a party or two a year, but didn't really do much. And then 2017 or so, suddenly I was breaking out of an old relationship, and I started writing again. And then on my ukulele, I wrote a couple of 3 songs, and I pulled my guitar out right after I moved off by myself, and things started flying. Things started happening, and suddenly I started writing.
That's
and
great.
I wound up getting cancer in 2019, throat cancer, and went through treatments. And the radiation, affected my voice. And when I started trying to sing again, I couldn't. It was breaking up, so I had to just put a lot more air across it, and I almost yelled to make it work. But then suddenly it opened up.
I wouldn't have known if y'all hadn't said something, because you sound
It went
good.
higher, it went lower, and it's bolder. And once I learned to just not think about where I was singing or what note I was singing and just let it flow, then it was fine.
That's a much better representation of the story than I was sharing with him before you got here, which was I didn't really think Woody could sing until this happened. And then he got throat cancer and treatments, and suddenly he could sing.
I had been in like all-state chorus in junior high and stuff, so I did have a voice. I just didn't know how to use it.
Right on.
I just overthought everything, you know. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to hit this next note, and of course, you don't hit it when you think you're not going to hit it. And if you have faith, you might, but if you just don't think about it at all, it'll happen.
Well, as
surrender to the muse.
Surrender to the muse. Let it sing. I mean, there's a reason they call it music.
I'm in a very early stage of learning how to play guitar. I think I've told somebody else on the show before that I figure out some things by listening and just kind of picking along to some easier songs. You know, Henry Parsons is a good one because there's not a whole lot of. I'm able to kind of pick on it a little bit and play. Recently have started figuring out some pentatonic stuff very lightly. Relating back to what you said, I similarly have figured out that if I will just move my fingers around, even if it's the wrong note, it's teaching my hand to work the neck a bit. And instead of being nervous about, am I going to do this note right, that note right? Anyway, I'm rambling on.
Well, there's a famous quote that it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill or master something, and I took about 30 years to get my 10,000 hours. It took me like 7 years before I could play guitar and sing at the same time.
Which is another hard thing to do, I came to realize.
And I think it was my 12th year that I was able to like play a melody run or a scale. And so, you know, I was a slow learner. And in fact, music was the one thing I could not wrap my head around as a kid. Everything else, math, science, English, everything else just was like remembering. And it wasn't like I had to stretch myself, but music was like befuddling me. And I still can't quite visualize the geometry of music. I
Same.
Partially. I feel more like an illiterate storyteller than I do any kind of a master when it comes to music.
Sound great.
Yeah, but the inspiration, following the inspiration, and you know that's what it's about to me, and that's where I tend to excel. And the so the less I think about what I'm doing, and the more I just do it, the better it gets.
Well said. Well said.
And like Danny, I recognize that Fred, too, was inspired by the muse. It's the same force. And so people like him support people like me very effectively. And we can't really exist without them. And so the muse puts them in our lives for a purpose. You know?
I'm the one that used to do all the hard work.
Yeah, and if you're not comfortable with the word muse, I literally have written a song called Call It What You Want To.
Well, why don't we hear that? I love that song.
That is a good one.
Is that the award-winning song?
That is. I did win a little, like a internet songwriters group song award.
Oh, fantastic.
I only got to vote for myself once, and I got the #1 vote, so it was nice. It was on a song, I think it was, it was just a song about, I can't remember the theme, but you'll hear the song.
Okay, all right.
My angel must be working overtime. They gotta stay up all night just to keep my devils in line. I've seen a whole world full of darkness since I last seen the sunshine. My angels must be working overtime. Call it what you like, call it what you will, when the whole world spins around you, but you keep standing still, then everything you want begins to fall in place for you. Call it what you need to, call it what you want to. take your first step, then take your first fall. You've been out running hard, yet your back's against the wall. You can't hide for long. There's no need to be shy. Just take your best shot. It's only do or die. It's only do or die. Call it what you want, call it what you will, when the whole world spins around you, but you keep standing still, then everything you want begins to fall in place for you. Call it what you need to, call it what you want to, call it what you need to. Get your mind out of the gutter. Keep your head out of the clouds. Say it like you mean it. Just don't say it out loud. You can call it what you want to. You can say that again. You just call it what you need to. It'll be there in the end. Call it what you need to. Call it what you want. Call it what you like. Call it what you will, when the whole world spins around you, but you keep standing still, then everything you want begins to fall in place for you. Call what you need to, call it what you want to, call it what you need to, call it what you want to. My angels must be working overtime, and they gotta stay up all night.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you. That's a good one. I like the way that you're working. You've got an awesome strumming pattern. You're not scared to go up on the neck a bit for a slightly different tone, I think.
Well, they get some more harmonics.
Yeah. I like that. That's very cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Did you write that one?
I did.
Fantastic.
Wrote that one about, I guess 2 years ago.
Awesome. I can see why you won that Internet Award. It's a damn good song.
It's an inspiring song.
Yeah, absolutely.
I finally found the change in High Crimes and Trees, and I've talked to you about it. I tell Fred, all my songs, I wound up feeling uplifted and inspired after I finished them, but one song, which people kept requesting and loving, it was work, and it was taking the energy out of me. I'd finished like tired and whipped, and I said, I know there's a change I need to find to make it flow right, and it was a key change, and I found it a few months ago. I'm relearning the new key, but
Do you have that down now, just so things flow right? Maybe you play that for us?
I could play it. I might get the vocals going in another direction, but I'll flow with it.
We won't give you too much of a hard time.
Yeah, okay. I have to I usually play it with a capo, and I don't have a capo. Is there a capo around here? No, I'll just go ahead and play it. I've transposed it for practice for the last few days, so I know how to do it without it.
Danny would play without a capo. Too.
You have to show me again, I ain't seeing it right. The lines that you've drawn look off in the light. The way you've been framing me with all of your glory ain't telling the tale of your part in the story. There's a thing that you do, I'm afraid when I'm near it, I can't find me a judge on any high court to hear it. And all the things I've done wrong, I've done for all the right reasons. I've paved the low road right into hell with those high crimes and treasons. High crimes and treasons. You had a wreck on the way to your driver's ed training. It's one that you still have a hard time explaining. You told me you got off by begging and pleading. Well, I hope that you got all the lessons you're needing. There's a thing that you do, I'm afraid when I'm near it, I can't find me a judge on any high court to hear it. And all the things I've done wrong, I've done for all the right reasons. I've paved the low road right into hell with those high crimes and treasons. High crimes and treasons. Well, I'm still getting booked, but you're writing the sentence. Whatever it takes for me to pay for my penance. How long must I serve in this incarceration? It might take a lifetime for my reformation. There's a thing that you do, I'm afraid when I'm near it, I can't find me a judge on any high court to hear it. And all the things I've done wrong, I've done for all the right reasons. I've paved the low road right into hell with those high crimes and treasons. And all the things I've done wrong, I've done for all the right reasons. I've paved the low road right into hell with those high crimes and treasons. And all the things I've done wrong, I've done for all the right reasons. I've paved the low road right into hell with those high crimes and treasons. High crimes and treasons. High crimes and treasons. I've paved the low road right into hell with those high crimes and treasons. High crimes and treasons.
That's remarkable how different the feel from that song is compared to before.
I wound up with energy and inspiration at the end instead of worn out. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm glad you played that.
I finally found the right sentence.
Which was the key? What was the key?
I moved it to C, and I had been playing it in D.
Okay.
Yep, I just dropped it a couple of steps, dropped it a whole step. And,
Amazing what a difference that makes.
it does. It just gave me room to stretch out the voice a little more. Yeah. And I moved keys around. I just hadn't found the right one yet.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I'm super stoked to see you play now. I mean, I was excited anyway, but I enjoy listening to you, and I can't wait to see you over Livewire. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
And you should join us Sunday too, if you can, at the Globe. Woody's playing from 6 to 9 this Sunday.
This week.
June
Oh, is this Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then the day after the 20th, the Danny tribute, I'm playing at Athfest in the Vic Chestnut Award singer-songwriter showcase. At
No
Globe.
kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I play at 8.
Okay.
30-minute solo set.
Okay, good.
Yeah. This Sunday is with a band with John Miley and Robert Bell and Bill Bocus and Alberto Salazarte on drums and percussion.
Okay.
I'm so excited Alberto's going to be here for that.
Yeah, he's
he won't
psyched.
be here on the 20th.
Yep.
That's great.
No,
Fantastic.
he won't be here on the 20th, but he'll be back for the July show.
Okay, great.
Well, I know we're gonna. I don't know if you have another song to play.
Hopefully, yes, too, because I have 2 more requests.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm gonna shut the hell up then.
Yeah, that's okay. Just a little bit of a story that you may not know. Last July, my home, this old, beautiful, historic mansion on Deering Street here in Athens, was hit with a tornado. Absolutely, it was one of the most devastating moments of my life. A huge tree over 100 years old fell through the 3rd story, knocked the turret off my house. Left what was left of the turret, which was this cool old place. I always wanted a room to be put, like a secret room. We could still go up there and with just enough room for about 3 people, and we could sit and play music, which had never been done previously. Unfortunately, due to some complications with my homeowner's policy, they never paid to fully put the house back to as it was supposed to be. It was on the National Historic Registry. I could not have repairs done that were not up to historic code. The insurance company would not pay for it to be put up to historic code. And I wound up losing the house as a result. And I didn't know this was going to happen at the time, but Woody just happened to be here when the tornado hit. I was so glad you were here then. I remember talking to you the next day, and you said something about going by, or somebody had gone by, and just how devastating it was.
You couldn't get down the block. So he lived on the same block with the tree that owns itself.
Yeah.
And like opposite it. So the tree is here on this corner, and he was across the street at the other end.
Oh,
the
damn.
same block. And so I came around by the tree to go to his house. Well, I first tried to come down his Pope Street, and they were working. They had utility crews, and you couldn't get down Pope Street. So I came around and came by the tree. And as soon as I came around by the tree, it was power poles, trees all across the road as far as you could see down the block. You couldn't get to Fred's by far, so I just texted him at that point.
Damn.
Got by there a couple of days later, and it was was devastating.
And anybody that knows anything about that part of town, it's nothing but old trees.
Right. Yeah. When I walked outside the house and just looked up and down the street, I felt like I was in the war at the end of the world. That's how, and I knew that was a bit of an exaggeration, but it was how it felt to me.
Yeah.
And my friend Perry here, who I didn't know at the time, she lived just 2 blocks down the street, so she saw all that at the time too.
I took a few pictures.
Yeah, it was just crushing. But I went up in the attic that day, just trying to turn off power, see what was going on up there, see what was left of the top of the home. And I clapped, like I had mentioned before, my friend Jess, when he first walked into the house to hear how sound was. And I thought, this is pretty interesting. While this is like this and Woody's only here for a few more days, I got to get Woody up here. And we're going to climb up into the turret, which took a little bit of effort, and see what music sounds like up here. And there were 2 specific songs that I asked you to play, I'm sure, besides Man Selling Roses. I'm sure you know what they are.
Well, Place Where We Live, for sure.
And Any Way the Wind Blows.
Really? Oh, then. Yeah. Then. Yes.
Yes, I'd love for you to play those two.
I will do A Place Where We Live, but I'm not going to do Any Way the Wind Blows today, okay? Because I haven't played that one since then, and it's cold.
You haven't played that since then?
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was quite a moment in time for me. So I respect that. Is anything you say?
That's a song I never do solo because it's, except for that day because you wanted it and because of the storm, But I typically don't do that one solo because it's work. And I have wrote it as a band song so that if a band goes, hey, you want to do one of yours? It's 3 chords repeating, so they don't have to learn it. I mean, they can learn it in the first measure and go with it. And it works that way. But by myself, it gets to be work, and it's a lot of work, and it's hard for me to keep it going, inspired and stuff. But I will do Place Where We Lived. Okay. And then if you don't object, I was thinking Guns and Jesus.
That song's really been in my head a lot since we talked about which songs you were going to play at the songwriters event. So yeah, that's great. And I'm sorry for asking you to work, Woody.
If it wasn't that much work, I might do it. But it's just, I get tired after the first verse, and I hadn't even gotten to the chorus yet.
Yeah.
That was really a powerful moment with the wind, having literally blown that old tree through my old house.
and it's more of an electric song, which I don't have to work my hands as hard on the chords and stuff. I've come to if it feels like work when I'm playing music, I'm not doing it right. Yeah. Let's see. So, Place Where We Live first?
Yes, this is an amazing song.
The closer I look, the deeper I see as I write out the lines of what should rightfully be. Every right angle cuts right between the eyes, like I just got a letter from the old you and me. And sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. And sometimes it's the address that I give. Sometimes I think about the who's and then the what's, where's, why's, and when's. And sometimes I map how we got here from where all we've been. Sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. And sometimes it's the address I still give. Once I saw you as the answer to prayer, saw you as the fairest any God made fair. Felt you in my arms like I'd never felt before. But now I feel a pain I can hardly bear. And sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. And sometimes it's the address that I give. And sometimes I think about the who's and then the what's, where's, why's, and when's. Sometimes I map how we got here from where all we've been. And sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. Sometimes it's the address I still give. I just found a picture of the girl I used to know. Why'd it take so long for me to let it go? I guess I stuck around just to play my part in how I let you hurt me and helped you break my heart. And sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. And sometimes it's the address that I give. And sometimes I think about the who's and then the what's, where's, why's, and when's. And sometimes I map how we got here from where all we've been. And sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. Sometimes it's the address I still give. And sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. Sometimes it's the address I still give. Sometimes I feel like driving by the place where we used to live. Sometimes it's the address I still give.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't know if you know this, Woody, but I haven't changed my address. Very few people know where to find me here on the outskirts of town, and I cannot hardly bring myself to drive by that house.
Thanks for reminding me I need to do my changes.
I think you reminded all of us.
That's for sure.
That's good
So
stuff.
yeah, Woody's gonna play one more for us.
Okay.
At least.
And this song comes with a pretty funny story. I was walking down the streets of Waikiki, Kalakaua Avenue, the main drag in Waikiki, one Friday night. It was packed. This was about 2019. And I pre-pandemic. And people were handing out flyers left and right. And I'd get a flyer for, a tract for getting saved, come to church, and then I get a tract for the live gun range in Waikiki, one or the other. And I just after I got a couple and threw them away, I'm like, well, it's a good night for guns and Jesus. And then I went, write that down.
Excellent.
There's a song in there.
Excellent.
And then a few days later, I pulled it out and wrote the song. So it's a good night for guns and Jesus. There's only so far you can run. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. Well, it's finally stopped raining, the drought's been undone. First daylight, then insight that everyone runs. Then the thoughts and the prayers from the well-rehearsed players. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for guns and Jesus, and there's only so far you can run. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. If you ever stop talking, you'd better start walking. Caught in the axe, never fun. Every red-handed junkie starts feeling funky. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for guns and Jesus. And there's only so far you can run. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. Well, maybe he's dreaming the impossible dream. God knows his plan. But the devil, he offers all that it takes to get you to wager all that you make, till you grasp that one last straw and you come undone. And it's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for guns and Jesus. There's only so far you can run. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. He was found in the park with a gun in his hand. He'd had every bit of this world he could stand. He tried all the potions and the well-professed notions. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for guns and Jesus. There's only so far you can run. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. Damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. Well, damnation, salvation won't stop at this station. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for Jesus and guns. It's a good night for Jesus and guns.
I like that one more and more every time I hear it.
Thank you.
It just keeps going on and on in my head.
It's a powerful
that
song.
too.
I've always liked it, you know. And I intend to play that one in a couple of shows this summer.
Right.
And thanks for that backstory, because that
It really
makes
makes it,
complete
yeah.
sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
A couple of things I just want to say or share while we still have Woody here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Woody, we talked a little bit earlier about when I asked you to do the first Danny tribute last year and just kind of what that moment was like. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you since, but just as much as Bentley, anytime going forward, I don't see this event happening without you while you're still here. You've become as important a part of that as Bentley is, which Bentley is who Danny told me to go get.
Well, Bentley's done a tremendous amount more work to earn that than I have, but I appreciate it and I feel honored.
You probably listen to the Muse more than Bentley. I think Bentley maybe just kind of feels it flow through him without even really having to listen. But I had hoped to be able to, last year we did Lesser. Every year moving forward with this tribute, we're going to do one of Danny's albums or Bloodkin's albums. This year I let Bentley pick because last year I told him what to do, or I asked him what to do. This year he's doing his favorite Bloodkin album, Raving Beauties. And I had hoped to find a spot for you to join some. But he put together a band of all-stars in Augusta and said, Fred, this is the band for this record. We're rehearsing. Don't worry, we got it covered. The guy that's going to be the band leader is Keith Jenkins, who was James Brown's lead guitarist, starting in 1994. Damn. And then in 1999, until the end of James Brown's career, it was James Brown's band leader.
Wow.
So, yeah, Bentley Rhodes is coming with James Brown's last band leader to perform his favorite Bloodkin album of all time, Raving Beauties, from start to finish.
Jeez.
It is going to be an incredibly powerful musical moment that they haven't rehearsed it yet, but every time I'll talk to Bentley, he's like, Fred, don't worry. You know I could play this album by myself in my sleep if I had to, which I've heard him almost in his sleep passing out, playing the album out loud, sometimes with the guitar, sometimes just singing. I know he can, but I am so incredibly excited and just overjoyed that
that James Brown's band leader is going to come and join us.
wild.
When Bentley told me that the 2 weeks prior, I'd been listening to more James Brown than anything else. So it was just like one of those moments in time where everything just kind of came together. And I don't know what we'll do next year. Who knows? Maybe I'll even ask you what your favorite Danny album is. And if you and Danny work, that's no promise or commitment. I haven't got that far. We got to get through June 20th first. But I just wanted you to know that you're as much a part of this in my mind as me or Bentley or Danny or anybody else. There's a reason that you were the person that followed Danny into Deering Street.
Well, I'm deeply honored.
Thank you. There's also maybe a moment in the opening set where I ask you to do a little Dylan song along with somebody, and I won't go into that. Just I try to keep most of what's going to happen at the show kind of quiet.
I love surprises.
Before we get there, the one other thing I do want to say that's going to happen at the show that I've also asked Woody to do. Danny had a song that he wrote in 2002 when Mikey passed away. For Mikey, it's called "The Music." It's an incredibly powerful song. The last anniversary of Mikey's passing, when Danny was still alive, he had on Facebook posted a link to the song "The Music," which he had on his SoundCloud account. The following year, so the first anniversary of Mikey's death, when Danny was no longer with us, I shared a link to that on Facebook. And within about an hour, the link to Danny's SoundCloud, where the music was, had been removed. Any copy that the public could get to of that song was wiped away. I'm not going to speculate on how or who that happened or why.
That's crazy.
Or anything. I that same day, I believe, I found a copy of Danny doing the song on Song Cycle and posted it. It's not as good as the original version. Just he didn't nail it exactly right that day. But this year at the tribute, I've asked Woody to please play that song.
Magnificent.
Nobody else I would have trusted to play that other than you. Woody was there at the first Panic show, much as you were.
Yeah,
You and a dozen or so other people.
Do you remember that big ass dog that was there?
Not off the top of my head. I remember big ass dogs all over the place.
Jeff refers to it as a Shetland pony that we used to own. It was half Doberman, half Great Dane. Nobody ever wanted to come to my house to play.
Was that at your house? Okay, was Lisa living there at the time? Lisa Conger?
No, I just mean we brought the dog to the
Okay.
A-frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember, and my friends Jane and Kent and Susan lived there later. So I knew that A-frame for many years.
Is it still there, by the way, or no?
I don't know. I've not been down the road.
I tried to find it.
Yeah.
I may have had the wrong address. Please, I'm sorry I cut you off.
224 Waymanda.
Yeah,
Waymanda,
so-
however it's pronounced.
Oh, I was on King, I think.
No, it's the first
No,
right.
that was the Panic band house later.
Yeah, when you go past the bypass on South Village, it's the first right past the last bypass exit ramp
I know what you're
on
talking
South
about.
Village. Yeah, that very
It was
first
still there
right.
6
And
months
then
ago.
it
so.
should be on your left down towards.
I thought that's where it was.
Lane a little.
It's not over by Athens Regional. It's over
yeah,
there
exactly.
off of Millage.
Now the King Avenue house is what you were looking
Got it.
for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that was where they lived, or at least JB and who else? No, JB didn't live there. Sonny lived there. Dave Schools lived there.
Got it. Okay.
It was
JB?
Dave, JB, and Mikey, two of the three of those.
Yeah. Dave moved into my house in Willow Run shortly after that in '86 when I moved out.
Okay.
It sat idle for a few months, and then Dave moved into that
Got it.
house.
I didn't know that had been your house. That's where I used to go hang out with Dave all the time.
Yeah, I lived there for a year before.
I didn't know that was your house where I was hanging out. Well, I'm super stoked to see you play, and I'm gonna call my dad. I know your face. I just got to make that past connection.
I haven't had long hair my whole life. I grew it long, cut it off mid-'80s, grew it long. I grew it out until 2008, cut it off short again, and then just started growing it out again September of 21.
Were you a dead guy too back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't at all the Panic shows. I was, because he was out on the road with the Dead, and I used to laugh at my friends that went on the road with the Dead because I thought all these Panic shows on Monday nights were so great.
No, I sold T-shirts. I tie-dye and sell
Oh, yeah.
T-shirts and pay for my tour and hotel
That's right,
rooms
yeah.
and everything, and just basically, fund my vacation. Every now and then I'd come home with some money, but
Yeah.
I never had to
Well, thank you, Woody. That was,
Hopefully, I didn't put too much pressure on you, but the music is what I'm most looking forward to hearing that night at the show.
I look forward to learning it.
Right up there with seeing Keith Jenkins.
well, cool. I guess probably a good place to stop for now.
Let me add one other thing real quick.
Yeah, please.
Just talking about the show. And again, I don't want people to know about a lot of the songs that are going to be done ahead of time. But one thing that I do want everybody to know, in addition to this night on June 20th being dedicated to Danny, as our annual event will be every year,
This year, since we're playing the album, I shouldn't say we, since Bentley and his band will be playing Raving Beauties, we're also going to be dedicating the show to Panic's original sound man, Gomer. Yep. Gomer financed the album Raving Beauties. If it was not for him, that album probably would not have been recorded. So as Bentley and his band are going to play this song, it's going to be dedicated to Gomer. There will also be one other song earlier in the night that will specifically be for Gomer, and it's an instrumental track. We're not going to play a lot of songs this year that were played last year, but we are going to do Mercy Train for Bogart.
Ooh.
People that were in attendance last year thought that was the highlight of the night.
Mm-hmm.
It had a three-pronged guitar attack featuring my son, Dylan Adams, of the Athens band Nineveh's Garden. It also had a local guitarist from Atlanta that not a lot of people know. His name's Twig, Joshua Lee Thomas. He's an incredible, tasteful guitarist that can paint any soundscape just as beautifully as it can be.
Excellent.
And then the third guitarist last year was a blues guy, about 21, from Monroe, named Zion Stovall, who was a force of nature. Those three guitarists last year made that song absolutely off the charts. They were backed by Bentley Rhodes on bass and Bentley's best friend, Brian Brittingham, on drums. This year, I'm adding two guitarists to that song, so we're going to have 5 guitarists coming at you, the same 3 from last year. We're also going to have a good friend of Zion's, an 18-year-old that's still in high school in Monroe named Jesse Bennett, who he's a blues prodigy that I can't wait for people to hear this guy play guitar. He's a force.
I'm not missing.
Just like the rest.
I'm not missing this show.
And then the person that I'm actually putting in the middle is each of the 5 guys will have a chance to solo and shine. The guy I'm putting in the middle, his name's Adam Kane. He's an underknown, underutilized, also force of nature. He's probably a savant when it comes to music from here in Athens. He's going to be playing drums with the band Mono Hysterio that night, who nobody knows, and I'll say just a little bit more about them in just a moment. He's also going to be playing guitar. He'll be the third of the 5 guitarists doing solos this night. I'm putting him right in the middle, making him follow my son Dylan, which Adam's kind of a bit overwhelmed by that thought, but I know he'll step up and shine.
That's awesome.
I'm putting Jesse, the 18-year-old, he's going to be the last one to solo after Zion.
Excellent.
But Adam that night will also be playing bass in 2 songs of the encore, and I won't say what those songs are, but they'll be 2 of the last songs Danny ever wrote. And Adam will be one of 2 musicians that night playing 3 different instruments. Him and Bentley will be featured on bass, guitar, and drums. And I could not name which instrument those guys were best on because they're just as good on one as they are on the other. And I'm incredibly excited for them to get the chance to shine, but I'm more excited for the people that don't know who these guys are to have the opportunity to hear them. I've been very blessed by musicians just appearing to me in my life. I guess the muse has sent them to me. Maybe it's my job to help other people hear them, and I'm incredibly grateful. And yeah, I very much look forward that night for Mercy Train at Bogart, which, here's the tie-in to Gomer. This is why it's being dedicated to Gomer. When Bloodkin was originally recording that song in the old Panic studio, warehouse, in the office place right next to the Nowhere Bar, where the office used to be, that they were getting ready to do that song, and the band's old friend Guido needed a ride home to Bogart, where he lived. And Gomer was there that night, and Gomer said, who's going to give Guido the old Mercy Train to Bogart? So that's where the name of the song came from. That's why that song with no words, Danny didn't even have anything to do with the title to that song. That was all Gomer. That song will be dedicated just to Gomer that night. Gomer, much love to you, man. Thanks for all you did for our lives and for our musical legacies that we're trying to leave behind for everybody else to hear. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me in your home. I'm looking forward to part 2, and thank you. It's great to meet you, Fred.
Thank you so much.
left to celebrate now. This is my last night out. This is my last night out. Hey, this is my last night out. And there's a beggar in that doorway, and he's giving me the eye, holding out his shaky hand, asking for an alibi. And I tell him I've got no faith for him, and I tell him I've got no change. And I feel just the way he looks, and I feel so ashamed. Well, that first night I came downtown, I got painted like a clown. My friends and I got drunk and loud. We lasted years, I don't know how. So there's nothing left to celebrate now. And this is my last night out. This is my last night out. Hey, this is my last night out. So I'm heading back up to the hills all alone, locking my door, disconnecting my phone, sobering up and loading my shotgun. You better stay off of my lawn. Now the president's on my TV screen, stumbling through some scripted line. Some say he's a serial killer, some say he deserves to die. But the American century is over. Stick a fork in for the July. The future ain't nothing but fire and fuel, and now our wells run dry. Oh, that first night I came downtown, I got painted like a clown. My friends and I got drunk and loud. We lasted years, I don't know how. So there's nothing left to celebrate now. This